Hey, hello out there, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Hope everybody's doing well. Thanks for joining me here. I'm going to try to do a little demo here for you. Just do some drawing, hang out, have a little time this evening. I'm going to talk through some of the stuff I'm going through here. Hope everybody's doing well. So I'm on some Stonehenge paper here. The supply list from this class is on my website in case you want to see what I'm using. And I'm on the Stonehenge paper. I've got some pastels, and we're gonna draw. I'm gonna jump in here and do some drawing. If you're not familiar with YouTube, make sure you change your resolution from sometimes it defaults a little bit low, so bump it up there. You can watch it in 4K if you want. Project it up to your TV. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay out there. Hope everybody's doing well. Feel free to say hi in the chat or let me know where you're coming from. And yeah. Looking forward to doing a little drawing with everybody. All right, I'm going to jump in here with this soft pastel, this Rembrandt pastel, and just think about getting some big basic proportion in here. One of the fun things with playing with this pastel is I've got a lot of freedom to smudge things and make things sort of disappear. And so just at the start here, I'm just going to kind of race through things, thinking about some big proportion. I want to keep thinking about my angles, my tilt angles. So imagine you're drawing, when we're drawing Annika's profile here, if I could take this angle and compare it to our reference, our model, and bring it back and forth, I can see discrepancy. So again, maybe this is the tilt that you're trying to draw. I'm going to close one eye, hold this along that tilt, and then try to bring it back to my work and compare the tilt. See if my angles are similar. So important, right? So important. Hey, everybody. Welcome as you log in. Feel free to say hi. Let me know where you're coming from. I'm over here in Victoria, for those of you, Victoria, BC, Canada, west coast of Canada. I'm just thinking about some big angles. I'm trying to think about just roughly how large I'm going to draw Annika's head here. I don't have this very sharp. It's like a half piece of some Rembrandt pastel. Just trying to see where it's fitting on my page there. Hey, Sophie. Hey. Nice to see you, and yes, I can't see you, but nice to see you here. Are you, hope you're doing well. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for joining in. Just jumping in, getting some of this basic shape in here. I will reframe the camera as I get an idea of roughly where I'm going to be drawing on this. Thinking about my angles, my tilts. Sometimes, again, trying to not just draw like one line, but go back and forth over it, trying to really feel out those directions, those angles, trying to feel my proportion from the nose to the chin, from the chin, from the nose, from the nose to the chin, and the nose to the eyebrow, or how that proportion fits. And I'll make some measurements as I go through here. Let's go up in here, get a little bit of the tilt of that ear. Also just trying to think about the box of Annika's head. So what if she was a box? Like how wide is she? How tall is she? Hey, Milo, welcome. Hey, glad, I don't know what time it is over there. What's your time in the Netherlands? Can't remember what it is over on your side. But hope you're doing well. So just blocking some of this in. Thinking about my high points or side points. Hey, welcome from Connecticut. So imagine I had a wall coming towards Annika. I was going this way. What's going to touch first? Like her nose, her forehead, her chin, and so forth. Or imagine the ceiling was coming down. What's going to touch first? Or the floor was coming up. What's going to touch first? It doesn't have to be like the shape of her head, but it could be like on her nose. What's going to touch first? Or what's the far right point of the nose or the far left point, or other things like that. But just trying to knit these relationships together. So let's get her head up here, sort of. And some over here. I'm not sure how far, how long I'm going to draw tonight. We'll see how it goes, see what happens. But just hang out. Let me know if you have questions or anything. I'll try to be monitoring the chat. Oh my gosh, through 4 a.m. That sounds like I'm a bit of a night owl, but that still gets 4 a.m. gets a little bit late. Okay, let's see. So I just want to look at a couple of major tilts here. I'm going to go from Annika's chin to her brow, and I'm going to bring that back and look. So I'm trying to look at this angle, right? What's going on? Is it more upright? Is it more tilted? That looks pretty good. I'm doing okay, Milo. Thanks. I hope your drawing is going well. And then I'm also going to look at some basic proportion here, and I'm using more comparative measurement. I'm working off my screen over here, but as if I'm working from a three-dimensional model, I'm going to close one eye, lock my arm out, hold my knitting needle up, and put it on one point, mark where I see another point, and move that up and compare it to other places. Of course, I'll go through that a little bit more in my classes. There's also a video on my YouTube channel from like maybe 8 years ago, much lower technology, shot from my eye, that's trying to explain comparative measurement. So I'm just trying to look and see a basic idea of how this proportion fits to this proportion. Because that's really what it's all about, right? Get our proportions, get our relationship similar in our work, and then our work starts to look more like whatever it is we're trying to draw. In this case, a human face. So I'm kind of happy with some of that. I'm going to take my pastel, and I don't want to spend forever on this. I'm just going to very lightly go over everything because I'm going to use it to tone my paper. And some people are like, oh, you're going to lose all that, but that's okay. I find it again. It's just giving me something, a little sort of little loose clay to work with. I'm going to grab a tissue. I can cry in it later on, but I'll use it right now just to smudge some of this in. I don't know how it's showing up there on the camera, but I can see a little ghost of a line of her face. I'm just going to reframe the camera now. I have a better idea of where I'm going to be drawing on paper here. Let's just zoom in a little bit. And try to grab that focus. Let's see if that's focus sharp. Let me just, hey Alina, welcome. How's your day going? I can't remember if we were using these earth pastels, Alina, back when you were taking that one class, pre-COVID. Okay, so I've got some of that down again. I got this little ghost of a line. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to use this still some more. And just trying to mass in some of my shadows. Just for some quick terminology, again, I'm going to not maybe talk about everything all the time here, but as the light comes and hits a form, so here's this little strip of form, my lights are coming from above. As that form slowly turns away from the light, eventually it turns far enough that the light's just flying by, these little arrows, little photons are flying by, and they're creating this shadow edge, referred to as the form shadow edge, the terminator line on the moon, or the bedbug line. And the bedbug line theory being in classical drawing or painting. Imagine you were a little bedbug in here. You're happy, you're not I guess bedbugs don't like the light. You're happy, 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 happy. And if you were to walk up here and go into the light, you'd run away, right? So you're trying to find that point that divides the light from the dark. Form shadow edge. And then we also have the cast shadows. Hey, Nick. The cast shadow edges, which is something that's blocking a form, blocking the light, projecting itself down, creating a shadow. Hope you're well there, Nick. So I'm just trying to mask in some of these shadows. Now here, I'm not articulating everything with a line. I'm just trying to mask some of this in with a pastel. A little bit like sort of drawing out of this slightly sort of soft summation. I'll be able to slowly pull things harder and sharper. Nice. That sounds lovely. That sounds lovely, Alina. Okay, let's get some of this in. And let me just see. Hey, thanks, Milo. Okay, let's get some of this. So the form shadow edge again all the way along the jaw. And we go down to the cast shadow edge down here. This shape's blocking the light, projecting itself down. Get some of the cheekbone, creating a little bit of a shadow. Her eyes in the shadow a bit as she's turned down here. I'll just sort of mask some of this in. Again, this is going to get smudged and a little bit lost. So everything's a little bit soft in this particular approach with these pastels. Just kind of fun and slowly bring things sharper. Okay, get something about like that. And just darken a little bit of her hair, although I probably won't get into the hair too much. Let's look and think about how that ear relates to everything else. Oops, my chat just went cut out here on my tablet. If you imagine you had a horizontal line coming to touch the bottom of my ear, where would it go through my face? Depending on the tilt of my head, it's going to change. So here on Annika, her ear is going, if I touch the bottom of her ear with one eye closed, holding this horizontal, right, it's about sort of the bottom of the nose. So the ear is roughly starts in here somewhere, and the top of the ear goes sort of in here through her eyes up there. So somewhere in here again, I think they're going to be a little bit soft. I'm trying to think about the tilt of the ear. If it was just joining the head and it was like a box, how would it be? Hey, nice. Nicely. Yeah, I used to. That makes sense. That was the 5-week, two pastels and the rest just pencil on the gray paper. Okay, let's mask some more of this in a little bit. Yeah, everything's going to be a little soft and loose to start with. Hey, everybody, if you're just logging in, let me know where you're coming from. Say hi if you want. I can see the chat here. And hope you're all doing well. So something like this. Again, maybe we'll get a little bit of the contour of the nose. I'm going to take my finger and use it to blend things in. My finger is going to start to sort of push the pastel into the paper a little bit. The tissue is going to lift the pastel off the paper a little bit, make it lighter. My finger, as I get my grooves of my finger filled in with pastel, it's going to be a little bit more of a darkening tool. I know this pastel is a noisy medium, so hopefully it's not too noisy out there for everybody. I've got my mic right up here above me. Okay, let's just take a look at that. That's looking okay. Just going to adjust my my angle here for a moment. I feel like I'm getting a tiny little bit of glare on off the pastel, so just hang out for a second. Let me just pop this up and put it down this way. Sorry, my easel screw there is just right next to the mic. Just double check my focus for a moment. That looks pretty sharp. Let me just grab that in again. Okay. So I got this very loose an approximation of the start of her face here. I'm going to jump into this new pastel. It's a little bit darker. Again, it's all this is on my supply list. Link there, wherever that is above me on my site. And I'm going to just come back and basically do the same thing. Just slowly starting to commit to my shapes a little bit more. And this is not really sharpened up. It's just got a sharp edge because I used it a few hundred times. So just starting to come back in here, and I'm sort of just slowly drawing out of this very soft. I'll be drawing more and more commitment, bringing things slightly sharper as I go through things. Let's just think about some angles. I want to think about some angles from, say, the corner of the lip to the corner of the nose. Like, what's that tilt? How far back does the lip go? What's its relationship, right? Okay, something about in here. Something down here. I love drawing the profile and the contours, the ins and outs of the face, right? So expressive on that individual person's face. So beautiful. I'm trying to think about the distance from here to here compared to here to here. And just what's going on with that distance. Let's go down into here. And so I'm starting to be a little bit slower. What's that tilt on the underside of the jaw there? Is it slightly going down this way? Is it going straight across? Is it going up? What's that angle? Trying to become really aware of what a horizontal is super, super useful, right? So like just trying to be aware of what horizontal is. And then you can get a gauge of which way something is tilting. Yeah, so that's right. I'm just slowly going from some larger shapes in this case, sort of massing this in, and a little bit like working with clay and massing in some big shapes, not getting right into the eyelash right away, and then being able to slowly start to add more detail. I'm going to look at the edge of the nose and think about how does that come up to the eye? Like what's that relationship going back to the eye? It looks about where I want it to be, right about in here. What are some of the tilts on the eye here? Kind of around there. Again, I'm relatively happy with this proportion to this proportion. I'll just make another check here before I get too far in. I'm going to go from the bottom of her chin to the bottom of her nose. And then I'm moving that up and comparing where that comes in relationship to the eye or the eyebrow. So it's a little bit lower than the eyebrow up there. So my eyebrow is pretty good up here. I can maybe push it up a tiny little bit. I can also just check some very big measurements here for a moment. If I measure from her eye, say, to the bottom of her chin, and I go one of those up, where does that come in relationship to the top of her head? And it, there's quite a bit actually more of their head showing up there, so things are looking pretty good. I can look also at my width, like maybe from the back of the ear to the tip of the nose. How does that fit compared to the chin? And wherever it might come. Sometimes, again, these come to a lovely landmark that's really easy to see. Sometimes not as much. Where is that coming? Somewhere up there in the hair. That's on the ballpark. So much, of course, of relationship and proportion is about our width to height relationships. So just trying to be aware of my width to height relationships. I'll sketch that in a little bit. I'm trying to also just like make little airplane flights. I'm flying from here to here. How big is that? How long is that? Then I maybe fly this distance. How big is that compared to this? And then I'm flying this distance. How big does that feel compared to this? Okay, we're going to get some of this eye in here. Some of this shadow shape. Still thinking about slightly more big angles, right? Simplifying my tilts. Slightly straighter lines, blocking this in. Okay, let's get a little bit more commitment in there. Let's sort that eye out later. I'll zoom in on the eye in a bit. Get some of this. Again, just thinking, what if I squint my eyes and I'm looking up at Annika, I'm looking at my drawing? Am I seeing some similar patterns start to develop? Or do they feel very different? It's all problem solving, right? And what's looking like it vibes with things and what's looking like it's not fitting. And trying to sort out those differences, trying to make those changes. Trying to be in this mindset of constantly sort of questing for change, embracing when you see things that need to be changed, so that you can make your work get closer to what you're shooting for. Hopefully, okay, something up like this. Let me just check that the feed looks okay there. Things look pretty good. Okay, I'm gonna go in here with this pastel here. And the new pastel is just a brand like a Conte brand. It's a harder pastel, and it makes things a little bit darker, this particular one. So we'll mask some of that in. Keep it simple. Let's get in here with my finger again. And so I'm going to come back and start to use some Pitt pastel pencils to draw a little bit more precisely. But this is just getting this big mass of clay. Exactly, like those old find the 10 differences in your, I don't know if those things are Remember these cartoons or games back in the day of trying to notice the 10 differences between two pictures. Somebody's shirt has a stripe, now it doesn't, and so forth. I'm gonna eventually be able to add a little bit of white to my drawing to lighten some things. So I am trying to push things a little bit darker. And that's where I've toned the paper again with that initial pass of my tone, but just trying to push things a little bit darker so that hopefully eventually I can make things a little bit. Hey Ivy, welcome. I can make things a little bit. Yeah, I can bring some of that light out. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more on the face just so we can see that a little bit better. Okay, so let's see what I can do here. I'm going to jump back in here using these Pitt Pastel pencils. This is a 188. It's a little bit lighter. I also have a 192. Again, this is all on the supply list. The 192s I put some green tape on. So if I'm using the green tape one, it's the darker one. I'm not using the green tape one, it's the lighter one. Let me just try to get my model reference here a little bit zoomed in so I can see a little bit better. And I will start. I want to think about the big shapes, right? The big relationships when I'm starting. But then as I get a little bit comfortable with some of that, I can start to hone back into the smaller shapes. And for those of you who know me and taken classes with me, I always love digging into that nose shape. I feel like everything else plays off of it very nicely. If I can get that nose structure set in there, I can play, everything will play off of the eyes and everything else. Same as like when I'm sculpting, I'm not, initially sculpting in that eyelash or anything. Trying to sort of push in the eye sockets, bring out some of this nose shape and work some of those big structures and then be able to balance off of those things. I'm trying to find my form shadow edge here, bring that around. And I'm thinking about on the nose, if her nose is walking into a wall, what would touch first? What would touch first out here? Right about there. And then we're going to go up this way. And slowly round this around. And I'm still going to move a little, I'm not going to, doesn't have to be total tunnel vision right now. I'm just starting to get a little bit more commitment to this, or a little bit more focus in on the individual shape. I just want to lean back a little bit. I'm working up close. I want to lean back, see how that's reading. Take a look for a moment. Move my eyes back and forth a lot. So I'm looking at my work. I'm looking at my reference. Let's go down in here and around. And around. Making her lip a little bit lower. Just pulling that down. I feel if I can get the chin and the nose, or this part to that part, those relationships, I can judge. One can judge. It's amazing, right? Again, what one's eye can judge. Like I also have done millions of short pose figure drawing where I'm not measuring at all, or doing portrait drawing where I'm not measuring at all. You're just trusting your eye, and one's eye over many years gets very, very refined, right? And being able to judge. Your gut is telling you that that's okay. Your gut's telling you lots of good information. Okay, let's think about a low point on the chin, the slight ball shape of the chin, and then the underside going this way. It's going down a little bit. Bear in mind the camera comes in from my left side here. It's a little bit, I can't put it in my forehead yet. So it's coming in from the left side. I'm also thinking about a little tilt on the neck. If I go up through, where would the neck go if it kept going? How would it dissect through something? Maybe imagine, let's see if I've got a tilt on my arm here, like how would that go up and continue through my head if you imagine that, right? What would be going on that way? And that just comes back to, again, the idea of trying to link these things together, trying to intertwine these shapes so they're not individual. Or they're individual, but they're related to other shapes. Get a little bit of her eye, kind of block that in a little bit again. Commit to this a little bit more. Think about those angles. Now her eyes a little bit in the shadow, looking down. Get a little bit of that lower trough. The light's hitting it, and some of the white of the eye is extremely dark here because it's not It's not getting a lot of light on her eye. If I squint at her eye, right, most of her eye goes kind of dark. We get a little bit of the light on the upper lid there. And then we're going to get some of this stuff. I'm just trying to make a little jump. As humans, we tend to elongate the nose, and so interesting why that's a very common thing. But trying to think about this little space. Trying to think about how big is that little space? How big is this space? How big is this space? Up to here. And then go down there. Let's get this over here. That looks pretty good. And I'll push this up. I'm going to go up just a tiny, tiny little bit with the top of the lid there. Now, the earth pastels are erasable still. So, hey, thanks. Hey, thanks, Milo. For sure, it's a skill acquired over many years. I'm gonna erase that back a little bit. I maybe can't erase totally to the white of the paper, but I don't really have any white of the paper, so it's okay to push it back a little bit. And I'm thinking about this form turning again, and I talk about this so much in my classes. Thinking about trying to conceptualize your form, thinking about the surface normal in physics. Every little surface has a direction it's facing, how it's facing in regards to our light source. I'm not going to get into it too much here today, but something really, really helpful to think about conceptualizing your form and the way the light's hitting it. So getting something in here. Hey, Sandy, where are you coming from? Hope you're doing well. And so going around through here and around this way. So I'm just slowly starting massing in again some of this big shadow shape. And if I squint at, things are starting to get, they're starting to read in the right direction, right? Detail is not necessarily super precise, but that's where this particular soft pastel method, I'm trying to keep things a little bit soft and slowly draw that focus out. I always like to think a little bit like you're projecting. I don't know if anybody's done. Maybe let me know in the chat. You know, you've got an old school slide projector and you're projecting a slide on the wall and you're trying to find the focus. You're turning the focus. And so things are maybe a little bit fuzzy, but there's still a great sense of volume in that slide. And that's what I'm thinking about here. I'm just kind of slowly pulling out. Hey, welcome, welcome. How's the weather in Winnipeg? Hope things are getting warmer over there. Maybe it's already tropical. I don't know. Welcome, welcome. And so just slowly getting things, pulling the sharpness together, right? And I want a lot of softness in here, a lot of soft edges. One way I can think about my edge relationship is like when I'm looking at my proportion, how does my chin fit to my nose, fit to my eye, and so forth. With my edges, I can also look at maybe where is a really hard edge. Maybe this is a really hard edge. And I'm looking at the form shadow edge over here, and it's really clear, very dominant and clear and easy to see, but it's a little bit softer. Here it's maybe a little harder, right? And so I'm trying to judge those eventually as I continue to refine. I'm going to try to judge those relationships so that as humans, we tend to especially as you're starting to draw, to make everything really, really hard edged. And that's really useful to think about, trying to look and understand what's there, but then trying to back off and judge what its relationship with its edges to everything else. Our eyes as humans tend to get drawn more to hard edges and contrast, and so I don't really want everything calling out with the same degree of focus, right? Like going to a movie and there's a critical theme going on and all the people in the background are jumping out saying, look at me, right? You want them to be there, but not jumping out and taking over. Let's see how that's looking. That looks okay. That's pastel. Always a fun one. So much smudging. Okay, let's get back in here. Now, sometimes I use this 188, the slightly lighter hard pastel pencil. This is a Pitt pastel pencil brand. And sometimes that's my max dark. Like again, it's not going to go as dark as like a charcoal, but it keeps everything sort of within the same hue family. But sometimes I'll use a slightly darker one as well. We'll see where we go today. See how I respond to things. So I'm thinking about the surface normal up here. Imagine maybe on your eye, if it's comfortable to touch your eyebrow, and you're going down in towards your eyeball. You're kind of going down from that bony part, and you're slowly curving inwards, right, underneath. And so as it goes from here and turns down, we're slowly getting darker. There's this subtle drop off. Is this form is this form sorry, I'm just trying to read the chat there. As this form turns down away from the light. So let's go somewhere over here. Some people have a reader out for them who reads the questions to them while they're demonstrating in these type of things. But I'm used to flying the plane, serving the drinks, and taking the tickets all in one go. Something like this. Let's see. Nice. So yeah, I've been streaming at 1080 since I started teaching online, and just recently I've been since January been streaming in 4K. I don't know how many people have 4K monitors, but if you do, it does make a difference to see it in 4K compared to 1080. It doesn't really make much of a difference if you don't have a 4K monitor. They both look pretty good. But okay, get some of this going in there. So again, just slowly building up my values. Get back in here. And I'm going to be a little bit deliberate again with this drawing, and I'm not going to draw forever. I'm probably going to do about an hour or something. And so, like a poem, or I can leave things out, or I can try to get this poetry of my drawing. I don't necessarily need to have everything stated in here. That can be sometimes, I really respond sometimes to unfinished drawings, right? Drawings that have some great finish, and they're sort of just sorting out the truth of things, right? And then often if I'm really trying to polish things, I get into my painting. If I'm really trying to finish a work. But again, sometimes it just depends. But in this particular case, I'm probably not going to keep some things a little bit sketchy. Just some of that poetry of the line of your pencil, right? That beautiful quality of your pencil. I just want to make sure I'm not going past the feed there. Okay, something about in here. So I'm going to get back in here. I have a paper stump that I can use to... Sometimes my finger is a great blending tool. Sometimes it's not as sharp as a paper stump. Instead of sharpening my finger down, I'm going to use my paper stump to help push some of the pastel into the paper a little bit more. And both driving it into the paper to darken it, as well as sort of smoothing it out a little bit. And unlike with a pencil, this goes much faster than like the graphite pencil, where trying to fill in the inconsistencies can take a long time. Here on this pastel, it's just easy to kind of quickly sketch over things. Now let's think about the surface normal of this bottom lip again. It's facing upwards more. And so the light source is coming from above. As it comes down and hits that, it's facing more. Think about the bottom lip, right? No, not the bottom lip, the top lip. It's facing downwards more, facing less towards the light. And so it's getting less light. Same as why we have these shadows here. Now, because this is not a total profile. What am I saying? What is this English we speak? I see a little bit of the... It's often really helpful to think about a center line through the face as if the face was cut in half. And so here I'm seeing this little center line, I'm seeing a little bit of space here. So these two high points of the lip, there's a tiny little bit of space between. Which is also why I'm seeing some of this eye over here, right? I'm not totally profile. I'm a little bit 3/4, but not very much at all. All right, I got you. Thanks, Milo. That's a nice, and that's a nice analogy. We're going from 360 or whatever it is to slowly adding more resolution. Yes, I hear you. Thanks. We'll get in there slowly. I'm going to be adding some white. I'm trying to think about my hierarchy of my values and where are some of my lightest points. So mostly on this paper, I'm not thinking about is the form lighting is going to be more of the paper with the tone, and the white's going to be more of my highlights. So we often have two qualities to our skin, right? We have this more form lighting, the more matte surface quality where the light photons are bouncing off and scattering in many different directions. And then we also have the highlights where they're bouncing off and bouncing into the eye of the viewer, so the eye of us in this particular case. And it's really useful to think about those two light. Again, I'm not going to dig into everything too much in this demo, but to think about the differences of the skin quality so that everything's not crescendoing up to the same point. Your form lighting point and your highlight point are not coming to the same place. The form lighting has its own set of rules going on. The highlight has its own set of rules. Sometimes they come to the same place, but frequently they don't. So I'm trying to think more about my form lighting and the direction these shapes are facing the light source, which is coming in from this direction over here. And so as I turn that cheek, I just round that cheek away. And I slowly get darker. Because as humans, we're very bad at judging value. We really judge value, which is referred to our light or dark, right? We really judge it by what's around it. So, something over here can look kind of light because it's got some dark next to it. And something over here can look really dark because it's got a bunch of light next to it. But like I bet the family farm, this is way darker than this. And so trying to think about that conceptually can be very, very helpful. Oh, hey, no, it's okay. It's all good. I'm just glancing down and reading these comments when I have a moment. So if I don't respond right away, just I'll get there. All right, something about like that. Keep filling this in. And I'm just looking at my big shape again. I'm going to grab the mirror out. Always helpful with the pastels because you never know how much pastel you've got on your nose, and then you look silly. No, I'm going to look at myself in the mirror. I'm just kidding. I'm going to turn around and look at my drawing and look at my reference in the mirror and look back and forth and try to see discrepancies or similarities. Try to notice, embrace the positive things. We get a little bit lost when we're drawing, or not lost, but our brain thinks so much into your drawing world, which is wonderful, that you get a little bit blind sometimes to what you're seeing. And having a mirror, having things flipped around can be super, super helpful to get fresh perspective. But that's one of the beautiful things about like working on something over a longer amount of time. Let me just make sure I'm not muted. Is you get all this time to come back and revisit your painting or your work and live with it for many, many sessions. What I love about like working on a still life over many sessions is you slowly refine and tweak and adjust. Something about like that. Again, that's just, I'm basically trying to darken in general even the max form lighting a little bit so that I have some room to put my highlights in. And hey, in the pastel class, I'll do first two sessions on some white paper like this, and then the last two sessions on some toned paper. So not using as much of the big smudgy pastel, but using more of the white pastel. Okay, just coming back and like each little angle. Like imagine this little tilt here on the lip. What would happen if that tilt continued? How would it go through the back of the head? Would it run up and hit the ear? Would it go below there? What's going to happen? And again, linking this in, really useful to think about one's plumb lines as well. So if I go up from the corner of the lip, where does that come in relationship to the eye? What's going on with that? I'll check it out again on mine. Corner of the lip, where does that come? So that's going okay. Trying to see. First, I want to just build its relationship this way, and then I'm trying to make sure I'm building its relationship this way. I'm going to move this back just a smidgen. Just a smidgen there. Just the edge of the, oops. Let me make sure my phone is on silent there. Sorry about that. Just where the back of the iris is plumbing in relationship to the lip there. Just checking that out. This stuff in here again I've kept it really soft at the moment. I'll dig into that in a little bit, get that a little bit clearer. But I'm just trying to make sure I'm happy with its placement through there. That looks okay. That looks all right. With its placement, with its plumb line, right? With its plumb line. Such a useful thing. Imagine you're drawing the figure. Where does the side of the neck come down through the feet? And dropping that plumb line down is so, so helpful. As long as the model's not moving too much, of course. Okay, down through here. This looks good. And just filling this in. Now, we also get this reflected light, of course, the light coming back into the, into the shadow. So here's the shadow. Light's coming down back into the shadow. And with the little photons, they're hitting other surfaces, bouncing back into that shadow, called reflected light. So as I move my hand up here, maybe you see that that shadow becomes, there's still a lot of reflected light because my paper's so white, but it becomes like a little bit redder. Let's see if I'm in the feed there. Yeah, you can see that getting a little bit redder, getting a little bit lighter, the shadow. So that's referred to as reflected light. And on her nose there, I can think about the surface normals on the lower part of the nose. They're facing out sort of this way into this room that she's sitting in a room with not a lot of light besides the spotlight. And so they're pretty dark, but the surface normals on the physical form here above the nostril are some of that, again, is rounding down, but facing downwards towards her dress or her chest, and it's bouncing light back up there. So it makes sense that the lower part here is a little bit darker than the top part. And it's always going to, like, it's just always so fun to conceptualize and take this. Things are always going to make sense. There's a reason why you're seeing what you're seeing. Let's go back in here. Yeah, exactly. That ear looks a lot lighter than it actually is in reality. It's just got a lot of dark next to it. And it wants to look light compared to that dark, but not as light as this front of the face here. So just masking it. I know I have an extra boost of value that I can use by using this next pencil, a slightly darker pencil. So if this isn't super clear, that's okay. And that being said, like if I start squinting at my reference, I don't see, things get a little lost in the nose, right? So while it can be articulated, it doesn't want to be calling out super, super strong, right? The differences. They're all pretty similar. As a rule, myself and all my friends and acquaintances who teach traditional drawing around the world, most people draw their reflected lights too light, right? That light bouncing back into the shadow. Say underneath your chin, that'll let reflected light. It's so dark. It's in the shadow. It's not getting hit by any of that main light source. And that's another useful thing to think about. Think about if you were a little person and you're a mountain climber and you're climbing around Annika's nose, everywhere from the edge of the form shadow here, inwards, you're going to be in the shadow. You're not going to be seeing the sun. You're in the shadow, right? Maybe down here you start to see light bouncing off this rock, bouncing back into you, but you're not getting hit by that main light. Or a way to think about light sometimes is to think about it like water. What if she was standing in the shower and the water's coming down? Eventually that plane of her nose or the shape of her nose turns far enough that this stuff in here is not getting hit by that water squirting down, coming down. And you go into this shadow. And then some of the water is hitting here and bouncing back up into that surface. But same through here, like down here, I'm getting some reflected light, but it's way darker than up here where I'm actually getting hit by that water. Where if I was a little mountain climber, here I'm being swept off that form. Here I'm safe. I'm in the shadow. I'm not getting hit by that torrential rain. So just trying to place yourself on that form and kind of walk around that form. Super helpful. So just when I think about that, I can conceptually think about pushing my halftone darker as I transition the form towards the form shadow edge. Because that's another thing is often we don't get enough halftone, we don't get enough transition. The halftone would just be with dark light. Transition is the lights turning, getting a little darker, getting a little darker. As the lights turning, getting a little bit darker, a little bit darker, a little bit darker, quite a bit darker, quite a bit darker, and then into the shadow. Just trying to think about getting that drop off. Hey, if anybody's just logging in, welcome. Let me know where you're coming from. I'm just hanging out and drawing here. I'm not sure how long we'll go. Maybe another 15. We'll see how it goes. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll try to look through the feed here. Yeah, looks good. Let me know. Yeah, let me know if you have a question or anything. See if I can answer some as we go. Got some of this shape. So I'm still also roving my eye around the whole shape and kind of moving around a bit. Let's try to smudge this in a little bit. Let me jump in. I'm going to zoom in. Well, this is a pretty good zoom factor, but just for fun, I'm going to zoom in a little bit closer. Why not? So I'm going to get into that eye for a moment. Maybe if you want there, everyone out there in the internet world, let me know what's your favorite part to draw on the face. Do you have a favorite feature to draw? Maybe it's everything, maybe it's nothing. Let me know what you like to draw. Okay, so I'm thinking about the ellipse of the iris, and it's not coming to face us like this masking tape. It's turned quite a ways like this, so the height's still very high, but the ellipse that we're seeing is very small there. So I'm going to try. I'm going to my darker pencil. This is the one with a bit of green tape on it, and I'm thinking about that ellipse. Now I don't see a lot of hard line on the front of her eye here. We go into a little bit of the dark of the tear duct coming around, wrapping around through here. But this is all pretty soft, and it's okay. I can lose some things, right? I can lose some edges. I can keep things a little bit soft. We get this little trough or little ridge between the eyelashes. If you imagine this is your eyeball, and the lower lid's kind of cupping around it, and this part's facing, kind of turning down, but this part's facing upwards. I don't know if that makes any sense. The that little ridge there is getting a little, is again facing upwards a little bit more, getting a little bit more light. Now the white of the eye again is very dark. And if I think about the white, the whole eyeball is a ball-like shape. It's getting much like her cheeks getting darker as I go across here. The eyeball is getting darker back here. But we also have the eyelashes like a little hat or an awning, and the upper eyelid, which is again on the top of the eyeball, is kind of sticking out above it, creating a shadow. Even here you can see my fingers creating a little cast shadow edge down below. So this whole top line is reading quite dark, and it's also casting, and also some of the eyelashes are coming down into some of the shape of the white of the eye on the bottom. Again, I want to keep things where I understand what's happening, but I want to make them become a little bit soft and not vague, but not overstated, not over articulated. And this balance, right? Like you got to dig in there. You want to dig in there to understand what's going on, but you want to then also make it so it's not calling out too much, right? Depending on what shape you're drawing. So that little light line is basically what's describing the bottom of the actual eyeball, and this dark line is the lower eyelashes. And then they're also casting some shadows down, so you get a little bit of a cast shadow coming down this way. She's got some large eyelash going across this way. A little bit of that tilt, lovely angle and sweep through there. Again, everything's kind of soft and vague. And so I just want to keep squinting, like as I lean back. What's happening? Am I over clarifying things? Am I under clarifying things? Hopefully I'm hitting this lovely tightrope walk of not too much, not too little. Let's go through there. And I'm going to go up a little higher with the light on the top lid. And again, think about that top lid. The bottom lid is kind of curving under like this, facing down more. The top lid's facing up a little bit more this way. We get more light on it. Let's go across here. I'll take a look in a moment there. Any questions coming in? And then I want to think about that eyelid on the top, making sure it feels like it's covering the eyeball. The eyeball is not sort of bulging out. So while we're going to the shadow here with some of this eyelid, it still wants to go out in front of the eyeball. So it feels like, again, it's encompassing that eyeball. It's holding it in. It's keeping it in place. Let's go through there. And then let's turn that form. Just want to turn that form down a bit. Now this eyelid, we get a nice highlight on it, but I'm going to knock it down a little bit so I can put a little bit of white on there eventually. And going back in here, trying to think about the side of the eye socket, what's ending, and the shadow, what's going on through here. Subtle shadow going up into the temple. And then just leaning back, taking a look. Feel I'm going to push this a little bit darker here. Let's just take a look also on the feed there. That looks okay. Let's just take a look. Oh, for sure. Like, yeah, that's one of the beauties of drawing the human face. It never really goes out of fashion. We are all somewhat similar, and yet we're all so uniquely different. And one of the things that I love about drawing the face, again, is this pattern, this relationship that every feature and how they relate together on each person has, and that beauty then that each person has, this sort of rhythm that your face has, how your features relate to each other. It's quite a lovely quest, right? Lovely thing to keep doing. I'm going to go back into the nose here, get some of that. So why is the nostril dark? It's just this more of a crevice. There's less reflected light getting back into that area. Just soften some of that. Hey, that's yeah, lots of people really love drawing the eyes and trying to get that likeness. Such a fun thing to draw. Such a fun thing to draw. I love drawing all the features of the face. I love drawing. I love sculpting and turning form around shapes. The nose is always a fun thing to draw. But everything is all similar. And I like to think there's really nothing that's more complicated than anything else. If you can get your head around it and see that shape rationally and sort it out, your physical line quality of being able to draw a line this way or that way is not a huge difference. But the trick is getting your head so you can be in a place to rationally see things. And the other thing that is very tricky is we as humans, we put a lot of importance on the eyes because, again, we're human. We read our mother's face. We can recognize this face. We read strangers we meet, and we can judge if they're trying to judge if they're friends or not, or what's going on. And so often what I see is a lot of people have an internal sense of, oops, I'm going a little bit too low there. I'm going to just jump back out again. I have an internal sense of what a face looks like, and it often fights quite a bit with the reality of what a face actually looks like. So again, very common to draw the eyes really big, elongate the nose, have no top of the head. And that's probably super useful sort of in our evolution potentially to, again, recognize these features. But when you're actually trying to draw it, we're trying to reprogram what one thinks a face looks like and what an actual face looks like. So I see people, it often feels like it's physically impossible to draw this way because it's so their internal self is fighting themselves so much. And then over time, as one refines, like anything, slowly reprogram your internal sense, and it's not fighting you as much as you're drawing it, so it feels much easier to capture some of that likeness or those shapes of the face. Let's see, it's about 50 some. I'm gonna go a little bit longer. I'm gonna try put a little bit of white on here, play with that. So a couple of different ideas. I can And here I'm keeping this lovely contour line. I'm not trying to fill in my background and make it darker. I can just use my eraser to erase out and bring in some of the highlights. Or I could use my white. I'll often use my white because it's a little bit more, it feels a little bit more like I'm painting. And often when you're painting, you want to build your lights. You want to build them a little bit thicker, make them a little bit thicker so that they physically get the light in the room that's actually where your painting is. The light hits those physical thickness parts of those paint and create a little bit more presence. Whereas your shadows, you want to be a little bit thinner. It's not as much a thing to concern about with drawing, but it's something that I want to think about when I'm painting. And so when I'm coming in here to add some of these lights, I'm going to think a little bit about sculpting them in with my white pencil. Let's put a few in here, see how it plays. And this is a General's white charcoal pencil. It's not charcoal, it's a pastel. As far as I know, you can't burn wood and make it white. So just a nice pastel. Again, it's all on my supply list there. Link above my head. So I'm putting in these highlights, which have roved. The form lighting is more out over here on her nose. The highlight has roved across and is about in here, where it's bouncing into our eye as the camera viewing Annika. Let's put a little bit in here. And then sometimes these highlights can feel a little bit standoffish on the paper, and I'll try to fuse them in a little bit with a stump. So let me just trying to assess as I get through areas what I need to have to get down there. I'm going to get a little bit of the highlight up here. And one way maybe to think about that, again, the difference between the highlights, where the light is bouncing off of that surface into our eye, would be, imagine if Annika was a bronze sculpture. We're not going to be seeing very much form lighting, matte surface quality lighting. We're going to very much be seeing just the highlights, that shiny part bouncing into our eye. And then imagine Annika was like a cloth sculpture, and there was very little shiny. There's no shiny parts, and so we're really just seeing the matte surface quality, which is referred to as the form lighting, and that's very much what it's facing. The light source is lighter, and what turns away and gets darker. So I'll put a little bit of highlight in there. Again, I don't want very much. I can't. My paper is not super darkly toned, so I can't get tons. This is not like tons lighter than the paper. But just a little bit. I'm going to blend it in with a different stump that's used just for my lights, so I don't cross-contaminate things. And I'll just keep playing a little bit longer. And then I think I'm going to wrap things up in the next few minutes. I'll just try to talk a little bit at the computer as well. A couple things I was talking about in terms of those value relationships. And like, I love drawing shapes of people's faces. Okay, let's get back in there. I can pull out my black mirror, some welder's glass referred to as a black mirror in classical drawing and painting. Always super useful. Look down at, helps you see your halftones. You can squint into it, look upside down. Use your phone as a black mirror as well. But I can look at this, look back at my picture, my reference or model, and try to judge and see values. Super, super helpful. Now this little shape is looking much too light up there. Let's just push it a little bit darker. It's light compared to the shadows around it, but it needs to be, in general, darker compared to everything else. Still needs to look light, but push that down a little bit more. And again, I'm not getting it into the ear at the moment. Let me just zoom out a little bit to show the whole drawing here. Let's move that over. Exactly. Hey, exactly. You know, and that's one of the most rewarding things I get from students. Again, so many different students and different walks from life and different goals where they're drawing, but that They, when they tell me they look at TV differently and they look at just, they opens their artist eyes again. It makes them think about looking at the world in a different way than normal. And it's such a beautiful, it affects somebody to look at the way they look at the world. It's such a beautiful, beautiful thing to do, be a part of. I'm just going to put a couple of accents with some lines up here. And I think I'm going to wrap things up then, everybody. Hey, I had fun. I'm going to just talk on the computer for a moment. I'm just going to try to get all this pastel off my hands so I can use my my drawing tool there. Give me 1 second here. So give me 1 second. Let me just mute that down. So, as I was talking earlier about the value relationships across her face, and so for people new to me, is I start each class by demonstrating, and then students start working or they work, they get their image of the model sent to them, and then I, like an in-person class, I would always start by demonstrating, then I'll go and sit around and give people feedback by sitting in their spots. And here online, I just call out your name, you take a picture of your work, you email it in to me, I bring it up on the screen, I can draw on it while having the model reference here, and give like so much, so much subtle little feedback of like, look at this tilt and check this angle out, think about turning the form this way, and so many different feedbacks. In many ways, much more feedback than in person, because it's so easy to draw on top of people's work. But as I was saying, thinking about conceptualizing this sense of value, so this form is turning away from our light source, how things are getting darker, right? Our surface normal is facing sort of this way, and slowly turning away from this light source. And our light source is coming in this way in general. And so if I'm just conceptualizing that and thinking about the direction that form is facing, if I were, again, imagining I was betting the family farm that this is, much darker than this right in here, that little part that looks really dark, which is humans will tend to go and do something like this and make this like really light maybe, or this really light because it looks light next to what's around it. And that can get us in trouble. So here, if I take this again and I paint it right in here, it blends in, disappears. I paint it here, it looks light. But I paint it over here, like that's how dark this is right here. This is right there. That's how dark it looks right there. Such a difference, right? We're so judge value by what's around. If I take this and I paint it here, it looks dark. But if I paint it in over here, it's so light. It's so light. So there's such a difference, right, in those value relationships. And that's happening with all this form. It's constantly turning. There's so few flat places in the face. Anyway, lots of fun to talk about. Let me make myself a little bit larger and I'll wrap things up. Let me just check the chat here. Hey, thanks Milo. Yeah, it's a beautiful medium. Again, it's a very quick and fun medium. If you weren't in the Netherlands, again, come back and take, time-wise, it's always so hard for you. Come back and take another class. Shameless plug. So here's this upcoming class. Let's hide myself so I'm not taking. Coming up Thursday. There's still a few spaces in it if anybody's interested. 4-week pastel classes are recorded. You can always rewatch them again. I'm just teaching on YouTube. Great quality. Other upcoming classes are cityscape painting and some portrait painting coming up. I'll show what's going on in the studio and wrap things up, and that's where we are. Let's just show what's going on in some of the other class demos going on, and I'll wrap things up. So let's show what's going on here. So here's a recent portrait painting demo from a few weeks back. Portrait drawing demo. 2 sessions. Some fun Alla prima. So one session still life demo. This is my one from this Sunday's class. Always fun with the sunglasses. And my most recent cityscape demo. Just capturing some of that light. And the current portrait painting class in progress demonstration. There's some sinking in on the right side of the paint as it's drying. Okay. All right. Hey, thanks, Sophie. Great to see you, so to speak. Great to see you, Sophie. Hey, thanks for hanging out, everybody. I'm gonna wrap things up. So thanks for hanging out, and hope to see you in the future. Take care and stay safe out there. Bye, everybody. Happy drawing. Thanks for joining me. Bye, everybody.